Welcome to the What's Your Deal podcast, where we discuss business acquisitions, investments, management, and exit strategies. I'm your host, Matt Uhler. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of What's Your Deal? And today, yet again, you get me as a host because I am going to be interviewing our friend Matt, who I feel like are getting to know a little bit more each episode. But today we're going to find out, what is Matt's deal? So we know that Matt has been a business broker for 27 years in the industry. But there's just so many aspects of Matt that our audience doesn't know that I find truly fascinating, from an entrepreneurial standpoint and from a personal standpoint and all the things in between. So without any more to do, welcome Matt to your own show.
Yes, thank you again for having me. It's nice to be on this side of the table because, we talk with people all the time in our episodes about how they got where they are and what got them there and who helped get them there. And so it's nice to be sitting over here and be able to share that with the audience and the people who are interested.
Well, what I love about your story is your years of being a business broker and even the years prior to that, being a young entrepreneur, your whole story is just full of so many things that make up who you are today. Your story has really, it motivated me through the years of us knowing each other. And I think it's just one for the books that needs to be told. And as we're moving into helping other people gain education into buying businesses, what have you, I think a lot of people get stuck in it must be nice that he could do that, but I can't. And a lot of your story has to do with, I feel like if somebody like you who, started from very little can do this and create wealth and create such an amazing, life and team around you, from your family to your work team, it's really possible for so many people.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I can share. I'm wide open to share whatever it is that you'd like to ask.
Well, okay, so let's go way back to the beginning. I won't say how far back, but back to when you were 17 years old. And I know that this goes even further. I know that you started working in a job setting as young as 13 years old. So go back to those early days and just your kind of childhood and what you grew up with and what you didn't grow up with and those kind of things.
Yeah, and what this is about for me is what led me to become an entrepreneur at 17 years old. And it really started with watching my mom. My mom was a single mother of two teenage boys. And I watched her for 4.5 years straight. She worked 7 days a week and one night a week to keep food on the table. And that's a very noble task. And also what she had to do. Literally just financially, there was no way around it. And so we grew up very minimally. And I grew up also watching, her go through the stress of us being evicted and needing to find a new place and all of that as a single mom. And so the work ethic that I saw from her in a W-2 position was something I emulated. So I did start working at 13 years old, and even some small jobs before that. But at 13 years old, I got a job as a janitor working third shift. So I would work Friday nights after school right through the night, and then Sunday morning, starting at 5 a.m. until noon, working as a janitor. And at the time, it was the only job that was available to me, but it was also just what you do. And as I continued to work my way through working for somebody else, the trading time for dollars started to become more evident to me as I just could not figure out how to get ahead, even at a young age. There just wasn't enough hours in the day, and I watched my mom go through it.
And if I remember right, because I think, just from hearing you speak from time to time, that you were doing this work to essentially help your household.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was certainly to help our household, but also just if I wanted money for anything, it was coming from me. Mm-hmm. And the W-2 position was what I saw. It was all I knew. And so that's what I did.
Right. And so you started your first business at 17. And I think the trajectory of how you got into that first business is a little bit different because, we think of young folks these days, finishing high school and then going off to secondary education. So, going off to college. And a lot of times it's become pretty customary that, there's scholarships, but that the family pays for that education. You knew that wasn't an option for you.
Yeah, if I was going to pursue further education, it was going to come from me, which would have been fine. But I also couldn't decide what it was I wanted to do. And it was really a low point around the time of graduation where I was working so much at that point as a janitor and otherwise. I mean, I couldn't keep my eyes open. I mean, literally, I at one point I fell asleep at a stoplight and bumped into the car in front of me. I mean, I was just exhausted trading time for dollars. And so this idea of me being able to become self-employed and call my own shots, and again, that goes with lots of caveats, but being able to call my own shots was something that I decided would be next for me. And the vision of that came from a teacher. And he was what we'll call a shop teacher. It was actually called Power and Energy. But he was a shop teacher, and he said, listen, as he was trying to help me navigate what's next as I graduate, he said, why don't you start a business? And I just couldn't even fathom how that would even be possible. And he took me under his wing and helped me realize it didn't need to be that hard. And if I started a janitorial business, I already knew how to do it. And so it'd just be a simpler process than trying to come up with something else to start or entering the workforce, trying to do something else and getting more of what I had.
And I mean, I just find it so fascinating because it's easy to overlook this aspect, but you were 17. This is when most kids are, their junior year essentially, or preparing for the excitement of, graduating and then having a fun summer right after that. And here you are 17, starting your first business that you were able to scale into your first exit, which then leads into the trajectory of you becoming a business broker. So so tell us a little bit about that business when you started it so young.
Yeah, well, pain is motivating, right? And so if you can imagine, and I know a lot of people have their own stories, but for me, watching my mother work herself to the bone to provide for me was motivating. So it may seem dramatic, but I honestly, I feel like I hit the bottom at 17 and a little bit before that when it was like, something needs to change. I don't want more of what I'm seeing, and I want to be able to contribute to my family and myself and in another way. And so that's what inspired me at such a young age. And if it weren't for that teacher who suggested this as an option and helped guide me into it, it would have never happened. And, to put that into perspective, I started with one account, one house to clean myself while I still worked part-time in other jobs to support myself at the time. So again, started out myself with one account and then ended up building that business into 40 employees over a period of about 9 years and, covered the state of New Hampshire and some of Massachusetts as far as accounts we took care of as providing janitorial services.
Right. So 9 years is after starting at 17 is when you obtained your first exit. So that is when you then sold that business. And I know there are some aspects of going into selling it. You had ran into some speed bumps of, you talk a lot about paying attention to your or the ability to be able to read financial documents as being important as a business owner. And those words don't come lightly because you learned that lesson the hard way as well. So tell us about your first exit. And then from there, what motivated you into business brokership? Probably shortly after that, I think.
It really was. Yeah. It's funny you say the lessons. Pretty much every lesson I've learned has been painful. So it just seems to be the way it goes for me.
I feel like you don't listen unless
Do you think
there's
that's it?
I think that's it. I think, sometimes whether it's the greater good or your belief or the universe, sometimes I'll say, I feel like the universe is, slapping me in the face. And sometimes I feel like it's the harder that I try to make something go the way that I want it to is the harder that lesson is to learn. And for me, it's always patience. But yeah, those lessons, they're the ones then you pay attention to because I know you personally and I know that you don't take a P&L very lightly these days.
No, I sure do not. That was one of the lessons that I certainly learned carefully. But What happened was I started my business, and we talk all about this in through our podcast, but my business was running me. I was not running it. And so I was still running that business as if there was 1, 2, 3 people as opposed to 40. And so I was so submerged in the day-to-day operation that I wasn't aware of what was going on around me. And it was only when I went to get a bank loan, because I was growing so fast, of course, I needed operating capital and got declined for the bank loan, that I was forced to start to understand my business and run it as opposed to letting it run me. So that lesson came in that way. And once I started to run the business more effectively, it became something that was saleable. And part of what struck me and led me to the business brokerage industry was that the person who bought my business was a corporate executive, successful corporate executive with 5 kids. And he wanted to buy my job, which is what I considered it at that time. It was my business, but he wanted to buy my business to support his whole family of 5. And we went through that process, and it was a great process. And that's when I realized the power of people buying businesses that are already established. And literally the day after closing, he's supporting his family of 5. What took me what seemed like, well, it was a large portion of my life at the time, to get to where I was. So I became very, very intrigued, and I would almost say even hooked on this concept of the power of buying a business and building an asset, working at it like you're going to work somewhere else anyway, and having something on the other side to show for it.
Well, so I know now you've been a business broker for 27 years. You've participated in over 800 transactions. I know that you've evaluated. I mean, we started saying 2,500, but I like to think I would think it's between 2,500 and 3,000 at this point. Deals that you've looked through and evaluated, and right now you've owned over 35 businesses from that time. So we started with one at 17. We've owned over 35. You and I, a little bit of history of our relationship. We own businesses together as well. I think probably 10, 11 years ago, we met, and we're currently business partners in another business, and then also in AMP Success, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. But you definitely saw the power of small business ownership, owning businesses yourself, and I think creating a living on helping other people step into that role of small business ownership.
Yeah, and that's really what business brokerage helped provide for me. I mean, granted, I loved it, and I did very well at it. I was ranked top in the state many years, and I did well at it because I understood it. And through that process, opportunities presented themselves for me to get into other businesses as well while continuing to work as a broker. And so that's how I accumulated an ownership interest in the over 35 businesses over that, up to today, and still have an ownership interest in about 20, because I love small business and I love all aspects of it. And I'm not going to say it's always easy. Of course it's not. And I thrive on all of those dynamics.
Yeah. Well, and I know I can speak probably for a lot of your other partners as well, but I know that my husband and I, we're very grateful to have you as a partner and just have you in our corner. I've always explained to others you as being one of, if not the smartest business person I know. And it takes a team. It really does. So I want to ask you though, explain, we get a lot of people who wonder what a business broker actually does. So if you can explain kind of your career as a business broker, what you've learned through the years, and I know, and we'll get into this, but I know a big part of you wanting to start AMP Success, which is the education business around business acquisition, is just being able to tell more people than just the one-on-one, these conversations that you have every single day. Because you get people, is this a good idea? How do I do this? How do I do this? And you're constantly giving that advice, but you're wanting to give it to the masses. So explain to people what your career as business brokership has looked like. What do you kind of do on a day-to-day basis? Yeah,
so a business broker is similar to a real estate agent in the transactional component. But the difference between a business broker is that a business broker's job, at least the way I view it, is that when somebody's ready to sell their business, they typically come to me and I help evaluate it. Now, evaluating a home as a real estate agent, I mean, they're able to look at comps and things like that they have available. Business brokers oftentimes have some of those resources, but most businesses are not sold as part of public record. So it becomes difficult to say, here's what this one was worth, so this one's worth the same. So that requires a very deep dive into the financials of the business and the financeability of the business and the operational components of the business to determine even what it's worth. Mm-hmm. And then once you determine what it's worth, assuming the seller is ready to proceed, the business owner is ready to become a seller and proceed, that becomes marketing that business for sale, fielding inquiries from prospective buyers to help explain the business and come up with a structure, because again, it's not just buy it. I mean, typically there's all kinds of aspects of the structure that need to be dealt with and navigated. And then in about 70% of the transactions I've participated in, they require financing, which is a whole nother element. When you finance a business, it's not a matter of the buyer qualifying for the loan. It's a matter of the business being able to demonstrate it can afford to pay for itself, the buyer being able to demonstrate down payment funds, good credit, and their ability to run it. And so that process, that sales cycle is very involved and includes me getting involved very detailed with the buyer's personal financial situation and what they have available and the seller's history and all of their financial records. So it's a very close relationship. And then when we get to the other side of that, the buyer owns it. And part of what I see as my job is to have the buyer be prepared to own it, meaning all of the licenses they need in place, the new entities, all of the things, operating capital, all of the things they need to start day one is part of what I take on as my responsibility to get them there. And back to your compliment about me being one of the smartest business people for me, it just comes with reps. I mean, having been through that process 800 times and evaluated, a few thousand, I've seen a lot of what works and what doesn't work in small businesses, not to mention the ones I've owned myself. I have a lot of exposure, and it's been such a blessing for me to have worked with so many people over the years and seen and learned from what they did.
Well, and again, I want to touch on the future, and we'll get to that a little bit further down the line here. But there's a difference between one to one. So what you've been able to do as a broker is transactional or one to one. You're talking from Matt to the person selling or Matt to the person buying. But there's a lot of power in one to many, and what I've seen, so in my years, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life as well. I think I tried to hold down one W-2 job, and I was probably one of the worst employees that could have stepped through the office. But I mean, I got my job done. But nonetheless, I think when you know that entrepreneurship's in your bones, you just know it. But a lot of people even selling their business, they operate their business in a way that they're not anticipating putting it for sale. And so the value of what you're able to bring from so many years of experience to the one to many stage is communicating to these people that they don't know what they don't know. Potentially how to start to prep your business for sale. That can take 3 years of building. And if you're restructuring financing or what have you, what it may be, but as you're kind of turning because you're still a business broker, you said that you loved it, and you do love it. You're still doing it. But as we kind of move into this different chapter of your life, there's just so much value in being able to teach people how to, even from the seller point as well as the buyer point, because people are so fixated right now on, buying a business. They think that that's, what they want to do. And I believe a lot of them, that is what they want to do. And there's so much education that can go into that. But the aspect of even selling a business, you talk one-on-one to a lot of these people on how to, prep to be a buyer or a seller. And the opportunity to be able to do that one to many, I think is a really great opportunity for you.
Yeah, thank you. And, every business is ultimately going to be sold or close. And so every business owner is either going to become a seller or close down their business. And ideally they become a seller, because for most of the people I know in my world, the business that they have built and or own is one of the biggest assets they own. And so it's important to nurture that and treat it like you would any other significant asset in your life. And I think the presenting one to many, it would be one thing in my mind if I had just been a business broker and helped people buy them and sell them. But actively involved in the management of 20 of them brings another element that I just really value, and I'm eager to share with people who want to hear that and are eager to learn more about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that you bring up the active involvement in the management because I feel like it can be a little bit triggering, but we do get a lot of people, and I know we get a lot of people through the education side of this, so through the AMP side of it, and I know you get this as a business broker as well. I just want to buy a business that I don't have to participate in. Mm-hmm. And you're an ownership, and maybe you can tell us how these ownerships kind of came to fruition with the partnerships that you have right now. But you have ownerships in over 20 different businesses, and to an extent, you are a pretty active owner in most of those. I know in the business that you and I own together, I lean on you a lot of times for consulting, and I'm one of 20. So on that note, again, I want to touch on the active ownership. Yes, yep. But on that note, can you kind of lead us into how you became partners in these 20 different businesses?
Yeah, well, I love business, and I had so many experiences of what worked and what didn't work by interviewing over 3,000 people to evaluate their business and selling over 800. And so as a deal would come up, meaning either a listing that's ready to be sold and a buyer who wants to buy it, and they need some help. They either need some financial support or they need some consulting support, or for some reason they want some aspect of what I can help bring to the table, then we would discuss the opportunity to partner. And because of bandwidth, there's only so many hours in the day. And so for part of my model, it's important that I have a partner who's boots on the ground, as I call it, somebody who's going to run the day to day. And then I can provide the aspects that they want. And sometimes it's myself and other partners. I'll bring a group together to complete these acquisitions. And I can't make them happen. There's not an endless supply of them because it's got to be the right formula in order to fit the criteria that's successful. I've certainly tried some that were not successful, and I've figured out what works. That formula is part of what I follow now and has allowed me to participate in so many. And from an active standpoint, it seems that when the business is coasting along with no issues, my involvement is minimal. And it usually includes financial oversight and major decisions, typically because I'm representing a group along with the active managing partner. But there are also times when there's problems is typically when I get much deeper involved. And so as an example, during COVID, a couple of the businesses that I have an ownership in really struggled. Really should have just gone away. They struggled so much because of the industry they were in. And so those businesses became part-time jobs for me to do everything I could to keep the business solvent and viable and protect the investments of myself and my partners to get it to the other side. So the active involvement on my part varies depending on the business and the cycle it's in, because I've seen most businesses, there's never one that's perfect all the time. They're like life. Life changes.
Well, we talked about on a podcast a couple episodes ago, businesses comparing to being like children, right? It's like they go through growth spurts where they have temper tantrums, or they go through, different spurts where they're caring and loving and just want to hug you all the time.
Or they get suspended from school. Or that's kids. That's not yet. It can be an all-inclusive. What I'm hearing from you is that you're basically the fireman of you come out to put out the flames whenever issues arise. I'm one of many firemen, yes. But sometimes I get called in, but I don't want to ever minimize the other people that are involved, but just because of the experience I've had over this many years and this many deals, I have a lot of resources of what I've seen. And so I can typically come up with some ideas about what we need to do to try to solve the problem. And oftentimes that's reaching out to others, right? There's humility in having problems. At least I find humility in the problems I have. And so I'm very quick to think about, okay, who else might know how to deal with this or has been down this road before me and can give me some guidance to make that trip a little bit shorter than I might be able to on my own.
Yeah, absolutely. And the caveat to that as well is then you get to participate in the super high highs, the really good times. And as business owners, I feel like a lot of us are adrenaline junkies. I think the trendy word now is dopamine seekers or something of the sort. That's what all the millennials are using these days. And I can say that because I'm a millennial. But, we chase those good times and we tread through the hard times to get there. It does take a certain breed of person to be an entrepreneur. But you get to participate in plenty of those wins as well with all the businesses you have ownerships in.
Well, it's really what I don't want to say thrive on, but I appreciate the connections with others. And what I have found is some of the connections that I have with others reach a whole nother level when we're faced with something we do not know what to do, and we band together to get to the other side of it. Those are some of the highest points I can recall in my business career, is when it was a team sport and we got through it as a team.
You can do more, as a team than you can do individually. And
absolutely.
And I think a lot of times, and something that I've never seen with you, but a lot of entrepreneurs that I've witnessed, in my years of being in the ring, so to say, is, ego can definitely get in the way a lot of times. Is, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it by myself, and the spotlight's going to be on me. And you've always said you can do more with great people in your corner than you can do by yourself. And you have an amazing team of entrepreneurs and, business owners that have chosen to have you in their corner.
Yeah, and there's been occasions where they have absolutely come behind me when I needed them in ways that I can't even, that still shock me to this day. So yeah, it is a mutual blessing with the people I have around me that they're in my life for sure.
Well, speaking of high and lows real quick, I want to touch really quick and ask you a question. What is maybe one or two or just a few of the biggest challenges that you faced in your career?
Yeah, the biggest challenges. Well, as a broker, as a business owner, or both?
Let's talk more on, we've done some podcasts on some of the biggest challenges you've faced as a business owner. We can go back to,
That's right, we did, didn't we? Yeah.
the assisted living facility, the, production business. So there's a couple episodes on that, but if we're going to kind of concentrate on your career, as a business broker.
Yeah, so as a business broker, there's a few that come to mind. Certainly one was around 2008 or 9. So I started out working for a business brokerage firm and did really well in that firm, and it became time for me to be on my own, right? I wanted to do more of my own thing. And so we came up with an excellent arrangement where we collaborated, and I peeled off a territory, which included me. And that's part of what I bought. That was 2008. And so shortly after 2008, 9, and 10 happened. And I'm pretty sure I was out of business, just nobody told me. Because literally I would work on a transaction and have a whole file box full of a record that we would be working on. I mean, one in particular, I had the buyer in place and we're working on financing. And by the time we were ready to get the financing submitted, the business was gone. Like the whole thing just folded, closed up, everybody's laid off. I mean, so, I'd take that box and put it in storage and go work on another one. And so the first few years of me being the owner of the brokerage firm were a devastating economic time. And I was in debt from having bought the business, but then I went further into debt keeping it alive because I bought it with staff and agents and all of this stuff. And again, this might tie into your comment about me not being an amazing listener potentially, but
did I say that? I'm not sure.
It wasn't quite like that. But as I'm thinking this through, I wasn't reading the reel.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I would have done anyway. I mean, I was up to my eyeballs. And so I just kept doing all that I knew how to do, which was try to help people buy, sell, and finance businesses, and came out the other side despite it. But economically, there wasn't much I could do about it. When the inventory that you're selling vanishes in front of your eyes, it's a serious problem when you're in my world of being a business broker.
Well, thank God nobody told you were out of business, because you had no idea and you kept going, and look at you now.
I know. What would I have done? I might have given up, which I don't do very easy, but I might have.
That lays into what you say all the time. You don't know what you don't know. You had no idea.
I had no idea.
And it worked out well for you.
It worked. I got to the other side of it. But certainly as a broker, the other aspect that gets challenging is in my role, I am generally the person that's between the buyer and the seller. There is no other person, meaning no other broker. It's me. And it is super emotional for the buyers and sellers, whether they want to admit it or not. The buyers are generally taking everything they have financially and risking it on this investment to own their own business, which is a dream for a lot of people. And the sellers are typically oftentimes giving up the income and their baby, the business that has supported them and their family, and sometimes their kids have worked in the business. And 20, 25 years of doing the same thing in a business. It's very tricky to navigate a business transaction with that much fear and emotion and anxiety and trepidation. And I put myself in the middle of those. And so I honor that position, and it can be very, very challenging. I remember one transaction in particular where the gentleman had the seller of the company, husband and wife team. They had 5 of their kids that worked in this big business. It was a large company. And the buyer very astutely said, listen, I need employment agreements with the kids. I mean, I cannot have 5 people resign the day after I take over. And 3 of them were actually crucial in the business. And the owner of the business had a relationship with his kids where that wasn't he was not there he didn't want to have anything interrupt Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? So I said, listen, I will work with the buyer and your kids to work on employment agreements to satisfy the buyer's needs. And I mean, it just was, you can only fathom as a business broker, me negotiating with 3 adult children of the business owner it's just, and trying to keep the buyer happy and all the covenants not to compete and all the dynamics. The stress was staggering. And literally at the closing, the seller just apologized. I mean, the way he had behaved, and again, I'm not blaming him. I get it. It was a big deal and a lot of emotion, but the way he had behaved was just over the top.
Yeah.
And at the closing, he just said, listen, A, thank you. And B, I don't even know what to tell you. I am so sorry. And it took a serious toll on me trying to navigate that deal and get everybody what they wanted, which is what I had promised to do. So.
Well, and I don't want to put down real estate in any way, but I've done all of, started a business, bought a business, built a house, sold a house, bought a house. Actually didn't buy a house. Anywho, been involved in a lot of those kind of transactions. And I'll say, and I've said this to people, and I think this is why education is so key for people who are wanting to step into the business buying world. Nothing held a candle to the process of purchasing a business. I mean, it was a in-depth. I had so that made it better. I don't know what I wouldn't have done if I didn't have your education in my corner, which is, again, the one to many. This is what we're hoping to give to others. But I had no idea what I was stepping into from a what to expect standpoint. And I remember there being times where it was highly emotional and frustrating, and then, good. But I love that we're kind of turning a new chapter for people wanting to buy businesses. And there's been others who have started this dialogue. We're not the first to step into the business buying education realm. But I love that now there's just more education being put out there. So, before you get handed the keys to the car, you know how to drive a little bit. You know what to expect. So I think it's just so beneficial what you're doing and what we're doing here in with the AMP stuff to just help people know what they're stepping into. So you don't have to be the seller apologizing at the end of the day, potentially.
Right. Ideally. Yeah.
So speaking of lows, you've also have had amazing highs in your career as well. So can you give us an example of one of those?
Yeah, just one I'll share that comes to mind as you ask the question is I've, a lot of the people who come to me are they're taking every penny they have and they're putting it into a business with the objective of being successful. And there's a couple that comes to mind. They've become friends of mine, very close friends, but I helped them sell a business. They went off to start one and it didn't work out the way they wanted. So when they came back to the proximity, back to town, so to speak, they were ready to buy a business and they didn't have any money left. And so I was able to coordinate how to help them through that. And at this point, without getting into too much detail, I'll say that they are multi-millionaires, and they own 7 businesses, successful businesses, and they have worked hard, and they have been very technical and strategic about everything they've done as a husband and wife couple. And not only do I love the husband and wife couple story, but I also love the from nothing to that kind of success in what's called 10 years. And that's what's possible through buying a business. I mean, they had no money left. So that's, to me, a huge success story. Now, was I there every day of the week helping them along? I was not. But I helped them get the first step that they needed, and then several after that. I think they've acquired 4 businesses with my assistance up to this point. But helping them take those steps carefully and from a calculated standpoint has helped them to get to where they are. And they thank me still to this day for that. And so what more is there than being able to help somebody get what they want, who's really genuinely requesting it and eager to learn?
Well, I love that story, and I'm going to be bold and say that I doubt it's going to be the last story that you have with that, especially as we transition into a lot of what's in the future with Amped. But before we get there, another thing I know you're super passionate about is business and balance and family. And I know, I'm a wife, and my husband is an entrepreneur as well. And, we're pretty lucky together that we're, I would say, both equally as driven and crazy to describe entrepreneurs. But, we have 3 boys that are young. They're all under 8 years old, and we homeschool, and we do, all the sports and all the things. And then I still have time that fills up my cup with rodeo and a lot of things. And Travis still, does things that, fill his cup up. But I know firsthand how hard it can be when, us as entrepreneurs, we're unable to turn it off or find balance, or, in the times that it's low, it's so low. And, like John said, being able to take those hits, with grace and, I would say, positivity to, things will get better. But you've also, in my eyes, have done it well with balancing your family and everything. And can you just, talk on that a little bit? I know it's a passionate.
It's hugely passionate for me because I have seen it done well and done incorrectly so often. And my entrepreneurial path started driven by fear, right? I did not want to be in a situation like my mom. It was, working myself to death. And not that I do not work hard in business, because I certainly do. But again, I can decide if I'm going to work late one day because I'm going to be at my son's school for an event that morning. Those kinds of things. But like most of my lessons, that has not come easy. And what I mean by that is that I think it's very easy for business people, including myself, to get my identity and our identities wrapped up into what we do and what we achieve and how we perform. And that can be much more. I know nothing about that. I understand. Yeah. That can be much more rewarding than potentially going home to a spouse that's unhappy or dissatisfied because I've been gone all day or the person's been gone all day. Those things hit hard. And so I have constantly and still worked to navigate my personal life, my personal time, and my business desires to achieve and accomplish and conquer and, all of those things. And I think maybe for men, it can be even a little bit more challenging because being, maybe at our core, hunters and gatherers, and we are looking for the next tallest mountain to conquer, things are different now. And I've been at a place where I sacrificed my family to the point where it was at risk, and I don't ever want to get there again. And so it's a fine balance with achieving and trying to reach the goals that I think fill me up and not let it take over my whole world. It's a really fine line.
It is. And, I'm super blessed. I have, a husband who's my best friend, and I think the world of him as a business owner and entrepreneur. And I can remember vividly, we had just had our first baby. Still in the hospital. And, he's very involved. Don't get me wrong. And, it was probably because I hadn't slept in who knows how long, but he was secretly, making phone calls or whatever. And he was buying a directional drill machine. So a $500,000 piece of equipment for one of our businesses. And, but he was probably doing that in that moment because he had just brought life into this world, and being a hunter and a gatherer, he's like, I gotta be thinking about what's next here. We've set a lot of boundaries since then to where, and as entrepreneurs, and I think what's different than, the W-2 world, and I know there's very passionate employees out there. I'm very blessed to be able to employ a lot of those very amazing, passionate employees. But usually as a W-2 employee, you are able to clock out of some sorts, right? And I think that's one of the hardest things to grasp as a business owner is the ability to start to gather the idea that you don't have to answer an email at 2:00 in the morning when the rest of the world is sleeping. So I know in my household, Travis and I, we've set a lot of those boundaries. And I know that just because I know you and I know Audrey personally as well, and I know that you guys work really well on those boundaries as well. But that just comes with a lot of years and experience.
Well, it does. And it's a fine line. As a business owner, you can delegate authority, but you can't delegate responsibility.
Yeah.
And so what that means is I might need to answer that email at 2:00 in the morning, and I have to decide whether I need to or not.
Yeah.
And my wife, Audrey's been amazing at honoring that if I say I need to, and that I am not interested in compromising our quality of time and our togetherness.
Right.
And I'm also I'm not interested in compromising my ability to provide for our family and take care of what I think needs to be taken care of. And it's easy for people to think, well, that's just financial. A lot of times in my world and in my role, it's taking care of other people's finances. I mean, if there's earnest money that's going hard and there's a problem in the deal or whatever, it's part of my job to take care of what I committed to do. And so when you're working for somebody else, depending on your role, sometimes you clock out and you don't need to worry about it. When you're the business owner and the buck stops with you, no matter how big the business is, it overlaps.
Yeah.
And finding that balance. I know what we're working on right now is helping people buy businesses and sell businesses. But if the opportunity presents itself and the audience is there, I would love to share this piece because it's one thing to accomplish a lot in life and to lose a lot getting there.
Right.
And ideally, that's not the dream for most.
Yeah. And I mean, we can 100% probably do a whole nother segment, whether it's with me or I know that a long list of entrepreneurs that could talk on this topic as well, just on this topic alone. And I love what you said, because yes, at 2:00 in the morning, you very well may need to answer. But the beauty of business ownership is then you do get that, right to be able to decide if you need to or if you don't. And I think a lot of people in the start of business ownership come into burnout really quickly because, I know I did it when I started my first business at 4 years old, maybe. I was answering all the emails because it was that, first business hustle. And it's just what I thought I had to do. And then as I was able to, move to sustainability and then a little bit into scale, I was able to set, those harder boundaries where it was like, okay, well, this email can wait until later. So there's just so many elements that go into that. And I know that a lot of business owners would find a lot of comfort in maybe knowing that they're probably not alone and maybe struggling in some of these elements or, the ability to, and then you said this too, that there's never really any balance. Like when people say as an entrepreneur, like work-life balance, that doesn't really exist. But being able to find rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think myself for sure, and a lot of business owners that I know, I mean, I can flat out become a machine when I need to and get it done. But if I stay a machine, stuff starts to fall apart. Yeah. And so it's beneficial for me to know that I can do that. But I also need to stop as soon as I don't need to anymore. And a lot of people don't ever get that. They just continue until the life around them falls into pieces.
Well, and I like the word rhythm because there was a book. So if we know anything about me and self-help, it's that I will read the one sentence in the book and be like, oh, that makes sense. Got it. All right, let's go execute, you know. I'm not a cover to cover self-help book kind of gal. But I do remember this one book called The Slight Edge. And it was all about, and I can't recommend the entire book because I didn't read it. I read the one paragraph that made sense to me. But what he talked about in the book was staying consistent with the rhythm that got you to the place of finding comfort. Because when you lose consistency, and that doesn't mean working yourself into the ground, it can just, you know, keeping up on this aspect or that aspect. But when you start to slow down on consistency is when you fall down into survival mode. And in survival mode is when most of us as entrepreneurs start panicking and go, okay, well, you know, for you, maybe it's, I need another deal on the table or what have you. For me, it's, we need 5 more good Google reviews. You know, currently I feel like I'm a little bit currently in that mode right now. The entrepreneurial panic for no good reason, just because that's what my mind likes to do. But I did like that analogy was when you are able to find rhythm and stay consistent, then you're able to stay in the success and comfort level. And the balance is, or the rhythm is not going too far on one side or too far on the other side.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with all of that, I want to talk about what's next, because we have a successful career as a business broker. Have a successful career as an entrepreneur. You had approached me a while ago. I'm not sure of exactly the time frame because as typical entrepreneurs do, I think I had communicated to you in one of our, you know, P&L meetings that I was starting to become bored, and you had called me and asked if I was still bored, and well, what you got, Matt, you know? And you had this idea, and it wasn't called AMP then. It was a very terrible name that we won't get into, but you had this idea that you wanted to talk one-to-many and there's no doubt that you're qualified to teach in these areas on business, you know, buying and entrepreneurship. So together we came up with a education company called AMPed, AMP Success, and it is acquisition management profit education, in case anyone doesn't know.
Right.
A good old acronym. Yes. Okay. A good old acronym, since you love acronyms so much. But tell us a little bit about your vision here with AMPed.
Yeah, honestly, for me, it's an opportunity to give back. And what I mean by that is that part of what I didn't share with my story about becoming a janitor, owning a janitorial business, was that it was through people who taught from stage. And the one that's coming to mind is Tony Robbins. I was at a point in my life where I was literally suicidal with everything that was going on around me and my world and my upbringing and all of that. And I needed something different. And I found personal development and lots of amazing teachers, but I'll use Tony as an example, that he gave me hope and a direction, a path for how to get from where I was to what I wanted to be involved with and the life that I aspired to. And it was through that gift of his and many that I continued and still am on that journey and have been blessed with so many people in my world to give me the education I need in an area I need to obtain the quality of life that I want. That's what I'm trying to give back. And so I see AMPed as an opportunity to take the blessings I've learned in the education over 27 years and to share that with people who either A, have aspirations for something greater, or B, so they don't potentially make one of the worst financial decisions of their life or have to go through enormous struggle because they didn't have the information that would make it easier.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to do that. And I'm also equally as excited to have the same impact. I mean, literally, some of these people that I spent time with saved my life and gave me a path that I would not have had otherwise. And if I can give that to one or lots of people through AMPed, then it just seems like an obvious next step to me, and I'm so excited to do it.
Well, I have no doubt that you won't be able to do that. And if anyone's listening and they're wanting to start their journey in this realm of business buying, I would say, learn everything that you can from Matt. It's been amazing what I've been able to learn about the industry in the last couple of years. And that's even outside of having 14 years history of my business that I've owned. And then my husband having 26 or 7 years of history of entrepreneurship. And still, what I'm able to learn through you and the development of Amped is just unreal and unmeasurable. You mentioned that there's been people that have influenced you throughout your career, your journey to get to where you are today. And you say this in all of your episodes as we kind of wind down to close, that, nobody got to where they are alone without having a team or a hand up or somebody in their corner. So is there somebody that comes to mind for you that was that person for you?
Yeah, there's a couple, but I guess I want to bring to the essence of this. It's part of the humility that I think is so important, is remembering my roots and where I came from. And there was a teacher when I was in 6th grade that I remember to this day when I was in a miserable spot emotionally and mentally, that saw something in me. And to this day, I remember the way he smiled at me and told me something about me that made me sit a little bit taller and have a little bit more belief in what I might be able to do. And then my teacher, my power and energy teacher, who said, no, you can start a business. You can do this. And I'm going to guide you through it. I mean, where would I be without that? It's literally mind-boggling. And I've been blessed, whether it's with Tony Robbins, another gentleman who talked with me. I had lots of alcoholism in my family, and he talked with me about not drinking. And he was a close friend who was much older. And he said, I am going to guarantee you that if you continue on the path that you've grown up around and watched and you've tried on, you will fail, and you will fail miserably. And he asked me to commit to him that day that I would never drink again. And he said, I know if you tell me that, you will keep your word, and I promise you will never regret it. Yeah. And that was when I was 17 years old. Wow. And talk about somebody having an impact on your life that turns your life in a direction. Well, at that point, with an amazing history of alcoholism in my family, I never had to worry about it again because I ruled that option out. Mm-hmm. Those are the kinds of people that just move me to no end. And I don't know where I would be if I hadn't had that conversation, or that person willing to stop their life long enough to bring into me some hope and direction and belief. Yeah. So I'll stop there. I could go on for a long time, but there have been so many that have contributed to what it was I wanted to achieve and helped me change the direction of my life for the positive, that it just is, it's a huge, huge blessing, and I'm grateful every day.
Well, it's an amazing story to watch unfold, even in the short, decade that I've owned or that I've known you. So I'm grateful to be in this seat, getting to help you kind of unfold that story. And I know as people are, seeing you on social media or on stage here or what have you, kind of wondering more, who is this person behind the mic, or who is this person behind the camera? And again, a lot of people can easily think, well, that person had a hand up, or that person had it easier than I did, or that person must have, been smarter, more educated than I was. And your story really just drives it home that I've said this a lot over the years, with hard work and dedication, you can do anything you put your mind to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to share what my deal is with our audience. It means a lot to me, and it's something I don't take lightly. So thank you.
Well, thanks for being a guest on your show today. I hope you guys enjoyed this and you learned a lot more about Matt, the man really behind the camera, behind the mic, behind AMP Success. And we can't wait to see you on another episode.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and got some valuable insights into the world of buying and selling businesses. Want to be a guest on our show? If you have a deal that you'd like to discuss with us, or a business story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email using the contact information below in the episode notes, and let's make this happen. Never miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you found today's episode helpful, please leave us a review. It helps more people like you find the show.